What up, what up? Welcome back to the Sneaker History Podcast. My name is Nick Ingvall with my guys Rohit and Mike talk some kicks. I just saw that our fourth amigo here is in the text chat but not on with us tonight. Robbie is very opinionated about tonight's topic, and he wanted to make sure that we share with you all his thoughts on what we're going to talk about. So we'll leave that as the teaser for this episode. But how you guys doing?
Oh man, doing good. We're just ready for this week to be over. We take our annual family trip to the beach at the end of the week, so just trying to push through right now.
Nice.
You got this, Mike. I was going to say, I'm doing better because I've got Robbie's Statler and Waldorf commentary going off on our phone threads because the man is a living, breathing, and I mean this in the nicest way imaginable, troll. Like, just when you think he's about to zig, he zags, and he does it in the most humorous way. So I'm thankful Robbie is in our life, keeping it real as only he can.
For sure.
Absolutely. So I guess before we get into tonight's topic, which is going to be some really interesting news on Nike's new kind of move to zero waste, and also some of the new basketball stuff that they are dropping that I think is just a really interesting topic to dive into, as Mike mentioned, right? Like the Hyperdunk just was such a game changer that Nike almost hasn't caught up with that. So I'm pretty excited to talk about this stuff with you guys. Let's get into what are you guys rocking? What are you guys copping?
Yeah. So let me grab it. So what I'm rocking today, thanks to the nice people over at Reebok, is the Omni Pump 2. Dude, I know Robbie got on the other day. He didn't quite like the fit, but man, this thing is, to me, is super comfortable. I think maybe I have a slimmer foot than him, but super soft like leather. Really nice to wear. I wore it running a couple errands today, and I like it, man. Definitely a fan. COPPIN, I am waiting for this Answer 4 to come back out. It is slated for February, April 15th drop in that white and red color. So waiting for that one because I sold my pair I had years back, so I really kind of regret it, and I'm happy to maybe get another pair. And have a bit of a story about another cop. I didn't tell you guys. I wanted to wait till we got on air because it's kind of ridiculous. So I bought a particular pair of shoes. It was the Unity, the Cosmic Unity.
Cosmic Unity? Yeah.
And bought it from a particular store. I don't want to say them out loud because I don't want to jinx myself. And they never showed up. I didn't get a cancellation order, but I got a refund.
Okay.
But I called them. It was like, hey, just kind of being really ambiguous, kind of see what they're going to say. Like, oh, no, they should be shipping out on April 2nd. I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to see what happens now because it's a possibility that there's like just a major flaw in someone's system that make it a random pair of shoes.
Why not?
That's
because
crazy.
For all the sneakers that you've lost unfairly, Mike, this is you getting one back.
I think this is like the sneaker guy said, we'll give you one, maybe. It's not for sure yet. But I've checked twice now. They're like, yeah, we have your order. We're going to ship it out in a second. I'm like, all right, bye.
No, I was gonna say, Mike, like, do you even ask for the tracking number at that point? Because you don't want to jinx it, because then they might be like, wait a minute, this order was canceled.
Well, I have the order number already. They're like, oh, you have your order number? I'm like, yeah, here it is. They're like, oh, yeah, perfect. Yeah, we have it in the log. We just had a backup. It should be shipping out on the 2nd of April. I'm like, cool, that's all I needed. We'll see what happens. I mean, if I don't get them, I don't get them. But I just thought it was very interesting that there's just such a flaw in the system somewhere.
No flaw.
That's crazy.
So,
No, I mean,
How about
put it
you,
this
Rohit?
way, the Cosmic Unity has been one of my coppins in a while, but I think the colorway that I like, the Space Hippie colorway, is coming out in the near future, maybe even this weekend, so maybe that'll be one of my cops. But what I rock today, I actually I go back to my Nike Sock Dart Cargo Khakis. It's very very underrated shoe. Like, I always thought that was a spiritual successor to the Roshi because of the fact that they could do so much with the colorways and the materials on it, but I don't think it got its proper due. But very comfortable shoe, pairs well with whatever you have on. So that was my rock. And then for my cop, I'd mentioned the Space Hippie colorway of the Cosmic Unity, but I put in a bid for the Nike Dunk Gulf Low 58s. We'll see if I get it or not.
Okay.
That's one of the shoes that's been really frustrating because if you're a member of our Patreon, we have this lovely channel within that lets you know when all the different raffles are for some of these high heat shoes. And what was frustrating to me was I would see the notification that, oh yeah, there's a raffle for this shoe. It's on March 25th. And then when I would look, it'd be like, wait, I got notified on March 30th. WTF? Like, what the fudge? What's going on? So I'm hoping I get him because I think it's a lovely shoe. And I think the fact that one of my co-hosts is a big racing fan and his love of all things racing has kind of been transposed to me. So I figured I'd get my Nick Engvall on and try for those shoes.
Right on. Right on. Yeah, I agree. So the last couple of days have been wearing the DJ AM Dunks.
Okay.
So one of my favorite people in the sneaker world, from back in the day, and it's on our like little shared calendar of events where he was born. I guess while we're recording this yesterday. So I like pulled them out earlier in the week and just kind of been wearing them regularly for the last few days. It's just such a dope, like, it's the story of him being a DJ, the connection to like the patent with the vinyl. Like it's a well thought design, and rare that I wear like Dunk highs. So it's one of those shoes where I was like, I should just keep these out for a little while. But yeah, it's also like one of those things where you just kind of miss the energy that he brought to the community. Because I think like, if you're not familiar with DJ AM, he was part of the Air Max crew, which was basically, was it Ben Baller, DJ AM, and DJ Homicide, which, back in the day, all these guys were fairly well known, in the music community, in the entertainment world, like the Hollywood spots and stuff. But they were also like super active on Nike Talk, and like we'll have to try to get like, I would love to get Homicide or Ben Baller or both of them on the podcast at some point. But they just were an important part of like kind of taking sneakers mainstream, and DJ AM specifically, was kind of one of the first people to wear a pair of Jordan 1s to the Grammys and all of that stuff. So really kind of a staple in my like sneaker history, collective mindset with this whole thing that we do. So, but anyway, shifting to like what I was actually interested in copping, that Reebok Instapump like digital glow looks like something straight out of Tron. Like I like absolutely want a pair of those. And then the other shoe that like really caught my eye, obviously I'm a big baseball fan, baseball starting up again. And they are, Nike's doing a Griffey Max, a Jackie Robinson edition. So I've got like the Jackie Robinson Adidas that they did a few years back. I've got Jackie Robinson Adidas cleats that they did as tributes a few years back. So obviously, I would argue that he's like the most important baseball player of all time. Everybody's going to have a slightly different opinion on that, but I don't think the game really ever gets to the point it's at now without him. So that one for me is definitely something I really want to add to kind of the collection and display cases and stuff. So yeah,
nice. That's a good looking shoe, man.
That is a great looking shoe.
Yeah, and in a future episode, I think a very near future episode, we'll get into kind of the nuances of baseball and sneakers, because it's really interesting. The kind of the way that it's become disconnected, right? Like there's just not enough connection between the sport and off the field sneakerheads. So that'll be like a fun one for me to get into too, because depending on when you listen to this, like have another conversation coming up around tennis, and like the same kind of thing happened in tennis. And I wondering, like, it's all coming from like me just looking at the current state of things where everybody's like connected to this whole hype cycle, and like we have to be online for this, ready for this, confirmed app, Nike sneakers. If you're not there, you missed out, kind of thing. And I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity to look at other awesome things that are existing, as we all kind of funnel into these same places. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But so we don't have a review to read this week, but you guys could help us out with that if you wanted to. We wouldn't take it personally. Feel free to leave us a terrible review if you want.
No, please, let's do this. Let's meet halfway. So write us a terrible review. Like, be nasty. Tell me I stink. Tell me I know nothing about sneakers. But give us 5 stars. That's all I care about. Have it.
It's a good balance.
To help you. Help me to help you, listener. Because, I told my wife just now, I was like, please write us a review. And she goes, a review? I said, doesn't matter where. In fact, if you want to just write down a note card and put it on the fridge and give me your login information, I'll type it up on your behalf.
I'll handle it myself.
Just write us a review. Because, unfortunately or fortunately, it's the lifeblood. And if you continue to like the stuff that we do, and I kind of think most of you do because you keep coming back for more, it goes a long way.
Hey, I'm going to take that a step further, though. Although I do want to see the reviews on Apple, Audible, follow us on Spotify, of the many places you can subscribe on whatever podcast platform, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to write down your review and stick it on your own refrigerator and snap us a picture of that, I'll send you some Sneaker History stickers at least, if nothing else. Just tag us on Instagram, tag us on Twitter, because I just think that would be hilarious.
Things to do. Review Sneaker History. Gotcha.
Yeah.
What other sneaker-based podcast has a stenographer capability on deck?
We offer a whole new service. Like, come on, we're making your lives easier.
It's the only redeeming quality about the American legal system is the stenographer. So thank you for that. We were willing to be your stenographer, like I said.
Oh man, but yeah, I think the other part of as Rohit alluded to, the Discord community that we have is awesome. We are about to give away a bunch of product, couple pairs of Jordan 1s, Nordstrom Jordan shoulder bag that was like 1 of 50 or something that I was able to get a couple years back down in Beverly Hills. It was a fancy time in my life. I just no. No, it was actually a really dope bag. You can see it on the Instagram, or obviously if you're in the Discord, it's in the giveaways channel in there. But we're really trying to kind of get everybody in there. I would say pre our next trivia night, because that is one of the funnest things we've done, I think, as a community. And as much as I have pretty much lived and breathed sneakers for the past 20, 30 years. There was still a couple of questions that stumped me on it. So it's a fun time, and it's definitely a cool time to learn and kind of learn about new things within the sneaker world that normally don't get talked about. But all right, now that our business is over, I think we should start with let's start with the Nike outlet story, because I think Robbie's hot take has to be the hook at the end where people got to stick around for it.
Yes.
But one of our friends in our Discord community, Matt, sent me a couple of pictures today from a Nike outlet that is near him, and he sent a picture. We posted it on the Sneaker History Instagram, and it's basically a section of refurbished shoes on the back wall, kind of like the hash wall section, but it's specifically called out as refurbished. And I believe the sign above was like new and
gently
what was
worn,
it?
Cosmetically
gently
flawed.
worn. And I think the other one said something along the lines of Nike's move to zero initiative, which we've talked a lot about that throughout, like some of the footwear design and some of the manufacturing process and the materials that they've been choosing. But I don't know. What do you guys think about Nike having a wall of refurbished shoes? I just find it fascinating.
Well, this makes more sense to me for the move to zero, as opposed to keep putting out more and more and more shoes saying we're using recycled materials. This is actually I like this move, um, because you're actually recycling those same shoes. You're not just letting them float around in the world doing, who knows what, but you're doing something to keep them in rotation as opposed to having to produce more. Which, I mean, they're still producing more shoes, but you're getting it into the hands of somebody to, I guess recycle them, which is cool. My question is, like, what are you gonna find? Like, you're gonna find something like really cool in there that's been beat down. Like, it has to be like some good like Jordan ones in there, just like someone just like cast aside, and it's like, all right, on to the next one.
Yeah, it's put it this way, as a fan of that back wall, because almost every single sneaker trip I ever took as a kid, we went straight to the back of the sneaker store because that's
Yep.
where we lived. That's where what we could afford was displayed. And if we were feeling particularly froggy, then we would jump to the front of the store and see, like, okay, like, let's look at this display. To the point that both these guys have made is it's almost going to be a buffet style where you don't know what you're going to get, but I guarantee you there's always going to be one shoe that you're going to be like, who gave this up? And it's like, oh, it's got a smudge. Let me go ahead and clean this up. I know that for me, I once contributed, and this might be the biggest flex I've had on Sneaker History Podcast. So I remember buying the 2K4 All-Star Hirachis from Sneakers. And at the time, I was a Nike employee, so I thought, I'm going to get this employee discount even though I bought through Sneakers. I did not, and me being a cheap ass, I was like, I'm going to return these because I want full price. So I went to the employee store, returned those sneakers, and I was like, okay, lesson learned, Sneakers isn't about that employee discount life, but good lesson to learn about a relatively cheap pair. 2 weeks later, I see my same exact pair in the back wall at the new discounted rate, and I'm like, yes, I will do this. So in a way, I put the reverse layaway on them. And if more people can do what I consider to be the Tracy McGrady alley-oop off the backboard to themselves, why not?
That's fantastic. You deserve a Hall of Fame jersey just for that move right there.
No, when that jersey is being lifted, I'm gonna cry a single tear, or maybe 2 tears for the 2 weeks it took from the back wall back into my collection.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like the hash wall, the back wall is always the spot to go to, right? Because I'm all about like continuing the cheapness that my parents instilled in me with back in the day. Although they didn't have a choice, like for me, it's now at least most of the time is a choice. So I continue to land back there and try to find whatever I can. And I've been a proponent of gently worn and lightly used shoes on this podcast for a couple of years now, and I think it's cool that Nike's doing this. So the other kind of nugget of information that Matt shared with me earlier was that they are heading towards like a third of the stores having this. I don't know what the date is to have that, but a huge percentage of the stores will have this kind of refurbished section. I think it's awesome. I think it's a great move for Nike to do this. I will play a little bit of devil's advocate here and kind of my first thought beyond just like excited to find discounted shoes and all those, like, think about the DQMs with the pen marks, the Carmines with with the kind of like ink on them, yeah, with the pink. But Nike also just cut ties with, I think, DSW, a couple of the sporting goods stores. There was like 5 or 6 of them that they named in their recent earnings call that kind of became a news story, I think, on Footwear News. But is it really doing anything if there's still the excess product? Because like if there's excess product and there's a second business existing because of it, is that better, or is like it kind of just makes me wonder like what the best approach for this stuff is, because not to be stereotypical with the phrase, but in this economy, like more businesses in business is going to be helpful, right? Like there's plenty of people struggling to keep their businesses alive. So I kind of have mixed feelings towards it if I think about that stuff. I think in general, it's obviously like they're trying to move in the right direction, even with cutting some of the partnerships. At the end of the day, like everybody needs to be as efficient as possible for it to make sense for us to have the crazy amount of consumer products that are out there. But
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think about that aspect of it?
Oh, they gotta cut some of these product lines because there's no need. I mean, I guess I understand you're gonna find a segment of people to buy everything, but when you go into a DSW or you go into an Academy Sports and Outdoors or the places that sell the real, I don't want to, generic sounds bad. I don't want that to sound bad, but typically just the very inline sneakers, they don't have much of a difference. You go look at this walking shoe and this walking shoe. There's a gray midsole as opposed to white midsole, and there are two different names to them. One's a 1, one's a 2. I think if they start cutting things like that out, just make a singular product for that. Like if it's not one of our uh, flagship models, let's not do 20 million versions or variants of the one that's going to DSW/Academy and fill in the blank. They need to cut down the product line because that's the bigger problem. Because cool, I'm all for recycling the shoes and finding a new home, but at the same time, I'm like, you I see what you're saying because they're just kind of double dipping in the money at that point because someone bought them, now they're getting refurbished, now they're making another dollar off of them. When in fact you could cut product line, save some materials, and shrink your carbon footprint, and then maybe donate those shoes to somebody because they've already been bought. So there's better ways to do it, but like you said, they're trying to move in the right direction. So I can kind of applaud it for that. But there's better ways, and I'm sure we can all think of it.
There are better ways, but I also kind of take it back to what Nike has kind of ushered in, if you will, in terms of a modern theme, right? We've kind of seen them slowly mature into being an exclusive brand. And I think this takes it to that next step because now they are truly protecting the swoosh by saying we're not even allowing you to get it towards these channels that may or may not have weird connotations associated with them. But by putting this in Nike exclusive stores, it's that for us, by us mentality. Shout outs to Damon John, where they are being very protective and maybe rightfully so because they feel on some level that their product is better than anything else out there. So why should something, despite it being almost an Air Monarch-esque shoe, be in a Fred Meyers or a Kroger equivalent, when there is that thought that, no, let's keep this also exclusive because if it's got a swoosh on it, it deserves to have that exclusivity. It deserves to have the regalness associated with these very expensive brands like your Gucci's and your Balenciagas. So I get why they're doing it. I feel as an everyman, though, that it's slowly fading farther and farther away from me. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see, because at the end of the day, the receipts will tell the story. And if it makes sense and Nike does it, then they clearly see 3 moves ahead while we're only seeing 1 to 2.
Yeah.
I mean, and part of that, too, like with gently used, recycled, refurbished, whatever their program ends up being called for this. I would assume we see like an actual press release and announcement for this because it's such an important piece of their business right now that they should at least kind of shout it out and say, hey, look, we're doing this. It makes sense. But I think the other interesting part to that is, to Rohit's point, like, bringing it back in house with Nike definitely makes it more comfortable for people, as consumers to buy directly from Nike. The consumers that are buying at like an Academy or any of those kind of like sporting goods stores or the DSWs, they're not the passionate Nike consumer that Nike really wants, right?
Yeah.
Even if they're not like a sneakerhead, Nike wants the people that want to know more about Nike and want to know the stories behind the shoes and want to be fans of the brand, because those customers are ultimately way more valuable than your casual, like, I'm going to go in and buy the $40 pair from, Kohl's or wherever.
Yeah.
But I think that the interesting thing about it is the nature of consumers now, because everything has gone to online. There's probably a lot more of this product than we even realize exists, right? Like, people make returns all the time. We only really think about it when there's a defect on the shoe as sneaker guys, because, like, generally speaking, like, almost every shoe that comes out, we can either, sell it to somebody in the Discord community, throw it on a StockX or a GOAT and get our money back. Like, there's so many ways for us to kind of just move that and move something else in. You know, Mike's kind of the king of goat credit. You know, like that's like, you know, yeah. I mean, I think there's an interesting piece to that you know, a lot of people, especially because of the pandemic, but even prior to, buy a lot of stuff online and return it. Like that's not my nature. Like I'm very much like I'm only buying something that I know I want. It's gonna fit. Blah blah blah. It's very rare that I get something and I'm like, oh, this is super disappointing. It doesn't fit, and I get rid of it. Like most of the time, even if it doesn't fit right, or if I don't like it as much as I thought I would, it sits in the closet or something, you know, and I just hang on to it. But I feel like there's a trend in like consumer habits where, not even talking about like a sneaker enthusiast, sneakerhead type consumer, but like average consumers will buy multiple products, get them, try them on, and send some of that stuff back. And if that's the case, then Nike's probably dealing with a whole lot more of these, like, we can't sell them as new, but we can't, you know, what do we do with them? A lot of that stuff does end up at a Ross or a Marshalls or someplace like that, where it's like it's been tried on, but it hasn't been worn. So like, you know, they throw it into the bucket of like, you know, kind of that like bulk purchasing that those they're not really, I guess, discount retailers approach it that way, right? But that's also the way that they play the game with Foot Locker too. And to your point, Mike, the other last thing that I find really interesting is part of this is on, you know, companies like Foot Locker, Finish Line, Champs, East Bay, Shoe Palace, you know, pick your retailer, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that all retailers do is they want exclusive product, right? Mm-hmm. So they want the exclusive colorway, they want an exclusive model, and the more Nike appeases those partners, the more product they end up making.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense in a lot of ways, because why would I go to, take my, experience and relationships out of the picture? Why does the average consumer go to a Foot Locker versus a Shoe Palace versus a Finish Line versus any other, retailer, right? Like there's just not a whole lot to differentiate between the big mall stores at this point.
Yeah.
Other than, the usual like rewards programs and, personal connections and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, I think there's a lot more to this on a bigger level, where I think this is just like a step in the right direction, but it's a really small step to like a massive pile of shoes that need to be dealt with.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned that, just kind of exclusivity, just kind of a small baby tangent. But I remember, I grew up in a small town with just a normal Foot Locker. When I moved to Houston after I graduated college, being able to find like a House of Hoops, because they were just few and far between, was such an amazing feeling because of the exclusive things they have. Literally, not every Foot Locker has a House of Hoops, and there's nothing special about it. So, Foot Locker, just want to let you know that kind of sucks, because they used to have awesome stuff there. Now I'm literally looking at the same thing everywhere. But that was just a baby rant that Nick made me think of.
That's okay, Pops. I was just gonna say this. Like, if I may, do you guys? What's the end game with this? Do you think we see the possibility sooner rather than later of an all refurbished store, where literally every single product in that store is a refurbished product, or do you think it's just gonna hang on as an extension of a factory store or a community door?
It's going to hang on as an extension, I think, because I don't think Nike wants to do the quote-unquote right thing by trying to move, again, shrink their carbon footprint, but they're not going to spend all the time and effort, because open up new brick and mortars, you may maybe find some tabs on their website for Refurbished, possibly dedicated that way, but I don't see them open up actual stores, because I feel like that'd be kind of counterintuitive to what you're trying to do, I think.
I mean, what's that? Isn't there a site that's like Rescue or something like that? Isn't there like a refurbished Nike site? I think it's called Rescue.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's resku.co, and they brand themselves as Browse Refurbished Nikes.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, so it kind of exists. I don't know. Like, I think it's kind of interesting, because like Nike doesn't want to go too far down this path, because they obviously want to sell new, more expensive shoes. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe this is a good opportunity for somebody like Mario Restores to hop in and partner with a local outlet and actually do the refurbishing for the returns. Because one thing that I always wondered about shoes or shoe stores in general is that, you know, from my knowledge, my experience, any of my friends that worked in a store, or, any of the people that I knew directly that worked in stores, they never did anything to refurbish or clean up a pair of shoes that someone brought back in, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a missing piece to the equation, right? Like you could, I think of like, any of the sneaker cleaners that are out there, but like specifically it made me think of like Sneaker Lab, and they're like kind of like environmentally friendly stuff. Like that to me would be like a legit way to like have like a certification process of like, hey, this has been treated. This is now kind of sanitized and good to go back to the consumers that are looking for it. But I don't know. I mean, I think generally speaking, this just opens up a whole lot of other conversations and opportunities for Nike to get creative in the way that they approach this. But it's so hard to say too, right? Like I can't remember what the return policy is on the website, but it's definitely pretty.
It's like
pretty,
90 days now, man. They used to be 30, now it's
Yeah.
like 90.
And I think
I mean-
you probably have less people returning things after 30 days because most people are really like committed to a product at that point anyway, right? Like that's kind of one of those old like bait and switch, bait and hook kind of sales tactics anyway, right? Where it's like people forget that they even want to return it after a couple of weeks. So
See,
but,
people like
yeah.
me though, I'm surprised because unless it's something I've hunted down for a long time, everything's expendable. So what happens is I used to do it at Foot Locker all the time when I had things and going to the mall or whatever shoe store. I buy it. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like sometimes we buy stuff on impulse and it's like crap. Why'd I do that? You wear it, you kind of look at it, then something else comes out. You're like, oh, I'll just switch this out. Like I'll bring it in with the receipt, still within like I'll get it like within an hour of like the whatever day the policy is, and like I just want to switch these out. And but I'm that like I guess that what maybe 10% of people who take full advantage of those policies because there's too much stuff. I can't keep everything, and if I can get rid of it without making a fuss, I'm all about it.
I mean, in today's day and age, if you can take money back from any sneaker that you buy, that's normalcy now. I
Yeah.
mean, I think
Yeah.
this generation of sneakerheads is conditioned enough to be like, oh, you know what? I hit on this pair on sneakers, but I kind of don't want them. Let me just flip these back because as the records have kind of shown us, somebody always wants a pair of sneakers.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like currency. Like you can it's gonna be there. It's like
Exactly.
it's gonna
social.
something else is gonna come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Except for
Uh-oh.
the Nike basketball greater than sneakers that Robbie absolutely wants nothing to do with. But
Angry feelings. All he has is angry feelings towards these.
I misread the text. I thought he loved them. Robbie said he wants all of them.
I want them all
In
now.
fact, I have it on good authority. Robbie said his firstborn child, whenever he or she may be born, will be greater than.
He's
Anyway,
angrily
I
texting
digress.
right now.
I'm maybe speaking out of turn. But continue, Nick.
well, so I wanted to talk about this for a completely different reason, I think, than everybody else, because as a Kings fan, seeing De'Aaron Fox post
Talk
about
your
this
talk.
on Instagram, it's been a while since we got a legit basketball shoe connected to the Kings. I mean, shout out to Nike for making that Air Max 1 for De'Aaron because that was definitely one of my favorite pickups of the last few years. But it's rare, for Nike to involve some of those other players that aren't going to wear a signature shoe. I think partly because the cycle of basketball shoes is completely off the rockers right now with the pandemic and the seasons being off and I mean, we're just in a weird time for it. But I thought it was cool to see, De'Aaron Fox involved, posting about it, wearing the shoes, posting on his story that he was lacing them up and all that stuff because, personally, it gives me a personal connection and gives me a reason to actually want the shoes where, it's been, I think probably since like Tyreek Evans in the Hyperdunk, his kind of first or second year where he was getting the PE colorways that, when they did like exclusives for everybody, like a House of Hoops did like exclusives for every local NBA player that was on the Nike roster at that time. So to me, that in itself makes these interesting.
Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to it earlier. My thought on these is that can they come in and capture that magic that was the hyperdunk? You just mentioned it. That was hyperdunk was talked about from everybody, from the casual player in the rec league to NBA players. The hyperdunk was the shoe, and no matter what Nike's done since then, they've tried to um, bring new models in to replace it. I think the last model was the one that they'd actually, like the Hyperdunk React was the last model they did a couple years back, and they've tried to push other things like like it was a Hyperrise or whatever it was. They just didn't hit. They didn't catch on. And honestly, looking at these, the breakdowns of technology, you have a particular model for three different types of players. I love it. Like I love what's going on here. I may not love the aesthetics of one of these in particular, but I don't hate anything about any of these shoes. I'm looking at the breakdown technology. I don't know what the price points are going to be, but I'm guessing everything's going to stay around that between 130 to 170, maybe 180 max. I think this is a perfect way to get back into that team basketball shoe with something people like, and you're not skimping out on anything. You're giving literally these things here make, if you're not LeBron, make the rest of the signature players look like chump change when it comes to technology pieces. So if they market this right, I think they could literally swing the performance basketball game, because people out there like Puma are killing them right now because Puma's taking more time in their shoe. New Balance is really taking more time in their shoe and getting designs out there that people want. So if they want to get back in the game, I think this has the potential to do it, especially again with what the guts are of the shoe.
Yeah, and what the guts are basically the three silhouettes, which I'll just use this opportunity to kind of open people's eyes. So we've got the Air Zoom GT Cut, which according to Nike press release says are for players that favor cutting and change of direction. And then we've got the Air Zoom GT Run for energy return and running economy. And then lastly, the Air Zoom GT Jump for vertical jumping and impact protection. So to me, those silhouettes have language that I've seen in signature product before, especially with regards to the jump, where it's talking about vertical jumping and impact protection, which is something I always rightfully or wrongfully attribute to a LeBron shoe, because there's a lot of weight in that man jumping, and that shoe needs to lock it down. I will say this. The first colorway I saw, the GT Cut, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum from Robbie, where it's that red, white, and yellow colorway. That looks like a breathtaking shoe. Like, something about that shoe to me just demands eyeball attention.
Yeah.
And more power to them in the sense that Nike is projecting this as a performance-based shoe, because I think we had kind of lost sight from a basketball signature perspective of, okay, are these shoes for the court or are they off the court? And Nike at its best has that hybrid approach where you can go directly from a game to whatever outdoor setting you want afterwards. We don't necessarily recommend it, but it works, and the cut looks great for me. I'm interested to see what they do. And one other thing that I talked to the guys about before we started recording for the show is, inevitably, are we going to see the 3-pack where there's some sort of theme that ties everything together?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the cut reminds me of an actual on-court tennis shoe, like for the sport of tennis. And that's why I think I like that one so much, as I'm a big tennis fan. But look at the breakdown of the shoe. You have a full React foam drop-in sole, parabolic zoom air strobel. You're going to have a stabilizer guard to make sure you're not falling out anywhere, heel zoom air unit, and they say thin rubber sole, so it's going to be light. This thing reminds me, look at the breakdown, it looks like you took a Kobe 8 and gave it all steroids. And I love that shoe, and each one just improves on that design they literally made it for each a cutter, a runner, and then a jumper, because the jump is literally a LeBron shoe if you look at the insides of it. And it may be a little bit more tech than LeBron's shoe has.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. So like when I first saw, the first colors that I saw were all the like kind of lime green, almost looks like
the Volt.
Almost looks like a Dunkman colorway, right? Like, I don't know why I like that, just kind of pops into my head. which to your guys' point about the technology, right? The jump obviously being like right up there with the LeBron shoe, you know, I think we obviously know it has to be slightly less than that in terms of both price and performance, hopefully. But you know, this is like a a way for people to get excited about basketball shoes again for Nike, which I think that it's been challenging for them to keep people excited that weren't excited about a player specifically, right? Like obviously, that brings you in. As I said, De'Aaron Fox posting about this makes me interested from the get go. But then to see that, like, oh, these are much better than your kind of typical basketball shoe release, with the technology at least. And then, having the three choices, I think, is always kind of a good way to clarify for people to, like, hey, where do you fit into this, right? And I think Nike's done that in a lot of different ways over the years. My first like kind of thought was like the Air Jordan 2011, where you had the cartridges where it's like, the one was fast and one was strong or something like that. And
Kobe 7 too.
Kobe 7s, yeah. Like you have like so many examples of them trying to provide two shoes in one, which obviously I'm a fan of. I think that's a great way for people to actually understand what the cushioning is and how it feels under your foot. But at the end of the day, I would also argue that, like, as great as the technology and the swappability and the dynamic aspect of giving you different options for one shoe, look, these three shoes are probably going to be significantly better performance-wise without the interchangeable pieces, right? Because they don't have to worry about those little nuanced things that you would have to worry about if you're going to interchange, an insole drop in or something, right? So the fact that they all kind of have their own unique, whether that's the insole or the drop ins or whatever, and cushioning setups is also like another way to really draw in like a basketball consumer and like a sneakerhead that is paying attention to this. That's like, hey, this is going to be probably up there on par with the LeBron shoe, or I would even say like the Jordan 35, right? Like the GT Jump seems to be kind of targeted at that top of the line marketplace, whether there's a name attached to it or not. We'll see how they roll out the rest of it and who ends up playing and who gets colorways and stuff. But to me, this is pretty exciting. And I guess to Rohit's point, I kind of land on the opposite end of the spectrum from Robbie on this one, because I think it's the first time that I've seen something that is, I want to say, generically targeted at team shoes, that's actually exciting again.
I was just going to say 2 points kind of pop up in my head. One is the fact that you can often judge a shoe in terms of what the company wants you to think about it based on the endorser. So to Nick's point, we've got De'Aaron Fox, who's been that next great point guard that's about to make that leap. And we're going to start mentioning him in those top 10 or even those top 5 discussions. But the inclusion of Sabrina Ionescu, right? Who has, in my mind, probably done more to revolutionize the women's game than any modern player, probably since Diana Taurasi and Maya Moore. Like, they have picked the one star to say, this is your shoe. And I think it shows a tactical brilliance with Nike because of the fact that Ionescu is that girl in basketball, or is the woman. Sorry, I want to make sure I cover all the ladies for ladies' night. But that is always interesting to me because they could have gone with a legacy person. They could have gone with the Candace Parker. They could have gone with somebody else. But I think the fact that Ionescu, being an Oregon Duck, then going to probably the biggest media market in the world in New York, she's going to have her every movement on a court be detected by everyone. And what better way to do it than this? The other thought I had was, between these three shoes and the Cosmic Unity, I can't think of a more concentrated effort on non-signature basketball product from any one of the big 3 or the big 2 shoe competitors in a long time, because this is the 4th product now if we compare it, or we add the Cosmic Unity as well. And I wonder if this is signaling some sort of sea change that maybe, and I don't want to say this out loud, maybe the non-signature sneakers are about the same as the signature?
Yeah. And I was thinking, like, kind of along that same thought process, Roy. are they going to start cutting signatures? Because I mean, I may not be the biggest Paul George fan as a basketball player, but he has a signature shoe. But his shoe tends to sit on shelves longer. Um, I mean, are we going to start looking at that and say, hey, you know what? Let's take a step back. Let's get you into the shoe because each and every one of these shoes has more technology than PG's shoe has. Um, so I can see them say, hey, we're going to pull you back. We're going to get you some PEs, and boom, we can go this way. But again, I don't know the thought process because I feel like everyone's getting a signature nowadays. But I feel like I guess Nike is up to what LeBron, Kyrie, KD, PG. Is there anyone else I'm missing? There's only
Giannis.
those. Giannis is another one I can see. Hey, this thing's been sitting on shelf for a hot minute. I see Freak Ones and Freak Twos at the same price level right now on sale at different stores. I can see them say, hey, let's pull this back. Let's get you into this jump model or this cut model. We'll get you some dope colorways. Because why are we going to put this product out that's 120, 130 bucks respectively? Because they're the lower tier of the price points, but we can give you something better, but we're not going to be making a separate product line anymore because this is just sitting here. Like if you look at the sales, I don't see many people wearing them on court or off when they can go ahead and get Cosmic Unity for 130 or for 140. They can get these for various price points. I see as a business move, I would look at my two bottom tier guys in the sense of shoe sales. Let's get them in these bad boys. They're big market guys. Let's push it. Because Kobe started out in the Huarache 2Ks, Hyper Dunks. Those things moved like hotcakes because of Kobe. Let's use that same formula and give these guys better performance and not get them stuck into this same cycle of, sell shoes basically.
I mean, not only that, Mike, let's say that scenario you've called that works out, right? So we get rid of signatures, almost like a blip in the MCU. Mm-hmm. Whatever these great players are wearing, whatever that shoe may be called, it's going to be changed to, oh, that's a Giannis shoe. So even if the shoe is not called Air Giannis, because Giannis is that great of a player and he has that devoted cult-like following there, everybody's like, oh, I want the Air Giannis shoe. These informal nicknames will kind of take over. The other thing I've noticed as well is from a Nike global football perspective, they've been getting rid of a lot of their top male endorsers and focusing more on younger players as well as the female side of the game, because now Nike women's soccer is probably as dominant, and I could make the argument that the U.S. women's team is the modern day equivalent of the Nike Brazil soccer team in terms of just overall dominance and this certain pedigree that comes with putting on the stars and stripes and dominating every opponent you play. And the thing I see with Nike basketball right now is maybe we haven't done as great of a job celebrating the younger players because that younger generation isn't going to slot in. But right now, Nike is very top heavy in terms of its athletes being at their prime, if not exiting their prime. So I do wonder what's going to happen in the future because that's going to be a very interesting thing to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's actually almost just the opposite in a way. Okay. I think that there's probably going to be more profit in a Paul George shoe, a Giannis shoe, even on a discount. And because they're flooding the market with colorways, I mean, we've talked about it before, but like the reality is like a profit margin in terms of, a shoe has very little to do with whether it sells out right away or not. Because
for sure.
Like if we look at, like take Dunks or Jordans right now, right? Okay, if there's 30,000 pairs of a shoe and it sells out on sneakers, that's not a lot of profit. Mm-hmm. But if there's 20 colorways of PGs or Giannis shoes, or Kyrie's, right? Kyrie seems like he has even 2 or 3 times as many as everybody else. Oh, KD, right? Like, I mean, all these guys have like tons of colorways, but because because all those guys have their signature models are in that 130, 140 price range, with, maybe expanding a little bit on that for like the special releases and stuff.
Yeah.
But part of it is like the nature of consumers to buy. I still think like $100, $120 is a very tough price to get over for a lot of parents that are buying kids basketball shoes, right? I think that, yeah, it'd be nice to think that you're going to buy them the LeBrons every time around, but like, why buy a brand new pair of LeBrons at full retail when you know that 3 months from now there's going to be colorways that are discounted? So,
Sure.
I don't know if my hope is that hype doesn't play into the like young basketball consumer purchasing scenarios, right? Because if it does, then they're paying, those full prices, and we're just moving in like a crazy direction for all that stuff. The price points of sneakers are already, significantly higher than what I think they should be. But I also understand that, like, if the market's gonna pay for it and everything's gonna sit on the secondary market, there's no reason for Nike to adjust their prices. Like, why not take the profit? Like, ultimately their responsibility is to their investors and their board and all of that. It's not to the consumer. Yeah. But I think that like the other part about, to people wearing the shoes, the hard part about taking away those signature models from some of their top tier athletes is like, who carries the torch after LeBron, right? So if they don't have signature athletes kind of falling in line behind LeBron, scaled down, like KD Kyrie is obviously probably next in line in terms of just like sheer popularity, number of players both in college, in the WNBA, in the league. Everybody's wearing Kyrie's shoes. But if they don't do that, there's too many players that wear regular Nikes. Maybe this series, the GT series, ends up being more than regular Nikes, but like, like they're in a tough spot with basketball right now too. Like we talked about before, right? Like Kobe fans are wearing the Grinch, right? A lot of the guys that came up watching Kobe want to wear Kobe's shoes. Yeah. Kobe's shoes are not the best technology out there. They're not the best available shoes. We don't need DeMar DeRozan to wear Kobe's for Nike to sell Kobe's. I think it's great that he plays in them as a tribute. I think it's cool that Dwight's been playing in Kobe's, both Reeboks and Nikes. Like, that's been cool to see. But, like Kobe's stuff sells without those guys. And I think that those guys ultimately hurt their own legacies by playing in Kobe shoes, because they're not setting, maybe with DeMar where he's getting a ton of colorways on it, that are specifically his. But my hope is that, or my thought is that, like, basketball because Nike has such a stronghold on the market and there's so many people wearing Nikes, it's almost like too saturated with Nikes. So if they don't have these signature athletes to distinguish between whatever the GR shoe is of the year, of the season, and like the others, like they've got to keep all that in consideration when LeBron decides to hang it up, right? Because that's going to be the toughest transition. Because look, I don't know what you're going to do to get me to go from, I'm not a Kyrie fan and I probably won't own a Kyrie shoe. I've got a handful of Paul Georges. I've got a few Giannis's. But like the Kyrie shoe being probably the next visible, throne taker from LeBron as he steps aside, it's hard for me to think that they're going to be able to turn that into more profit when they flooded the market with $140 price point, and LeBron's are, 160, 180, whatever. It's going to be a really interesting few years as hopefully LeBron just keeps playing for another 5 to 10 years and we're all like watching him play at 50 or something, so.
Anything is possible. I know that's the other guy's phrase, but with LeBron, that truly is the case. I also think what Jordan kind of did by taking the quote unquote younger talent, right? They've picked up Zion, they've picked up Luka. Those to me would be the candidates to usher in that new generation. And I wonder, is this a cannibalization of sorts? Because what's going to happen when you put a person on Team Jordan is more than likely they're not going to get their own signature sneaker. Is that fair to say?
Or it's not a good one.
There you go. That's another way of looking at it. Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. Like, who in the past has said, you know what, I'm really checking for CPs? Like, Chris Paul is a great player, but the shoe energy is not the same as the player energy.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, like, are we going to see the death of the signature model like you guys were saying? Because it's almost coming up empty now because either players are promised one way or the other. And this also kind of goes back to the kind of speculation or gossip of LeBron picked his anointed successor, because you had mentioned kind of Kyrie is the next in terms of the line of succession. LeBron wanted Luka. LeBron
Yep.
wanted Luka to be the face of Team LeBron. And maybe it shows to the dominance of Jordan yet again that he was able to pillage this one player away and say, nope, LeBron, he's mine. And maybe that's a glorified FU to LeBron. Maybe I'm reading too much into it because I am a conspiracy theorist for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I do think the Kyrie's secret sauce is the fact that he does so well being an advocate for the women's game that love is spread. And I can't say the same about, let's say, a LeBron or a KD shoe, because when the NBA season is done, the WNBA season picks up. And that's where we see almost a second life for the Kyries that we don't see for any other signature product.
Well, Taurasi wears the LeBrons, right? The Diana Taurasi.
Okay.
So you have
Maybe.
Sue Bird and the Kyries, you have Diana Taurasi
Yep.
and the LeBrons, but it just they have a better, like, the keep Sue fresh is always, that's all, that's the whole thing they were doing with all of the cool Kyrie PEs. And no, you're right, but it just gives a little bit more life. We don't talk about Taurasi so much. We talk about what dope PE she has, like, kind of after the fact, but during the season, the only shoe people really talk about are Kyrie's because of Sue Bird.
Yeah, I mean, and it's exactly that, because the Kyries, and there have been multiple colorways where it's like the woman's touch or female is queen or king. I'm butchering all of these, I'm sure, but I just don't see that. And that to me is an opportunity lost. And maybe that's not a part of the LeBron business plan. But I think even with regards to Steph having that popular story about the young lady who wanted to buy a pair of Steph sneakers and she couldn't. And she had the wherewithal to write Steph a letter, and knock on wood, Steph and Under Armour responded brilliantly by saying, okay, you know what? This is a unfed portion of the market. Let's make these shoes for girls. But I would think we'd see more and more, but I guess we're not. But maybe that's something we'll have to solve for another day.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, you guys both made great points, and I think, just thinking about the different aspects of the sport that they have to embrace across all kind of nuances it's kind of like dumbfounding in a sense, right? If you really think about all the things you have to think about, all the people, all the styles, all the, like, there's just a lot more to it. And kind of circling back to this GT series, I think that the other part about this that I really like is just that it takes away a lot of that, and is like, this is going to be, you kind of alluded to it, Mike, like, it's hard as a sneaker fan to not see this as like Nike putting their foot down and saying, no, we make the best team shoes on the market. Because as much as, like, I love some of the Puma stuff, the Converse Evo stuff, like there's a lot of good basketball shoes out right now, but this just seems like Nike, kind of like taking it next level once again to be like, no, we're still the top dog, we're still here, we're still playing, and you guys got to go back to the drawing table and figure out how to step your game up this time around. So, but, well, I guess so. The last question would be, which pair are you guys going to go after?
I am leaning towards the cut, just because I do like the lower cut Nikes for lower cut basketball shoes in general. But I love the fact, like I said, it reminds me of just looking purely at the pieces of the sneaker. Looks like a Kobe 8 on steroids, because I love the Kobe 8, the drop in Lunar. This was drop in React, but you also got the full Zoom Strobel heel. I think you got the heel piece, heel zoom back as well. So, I mean, you can't beat that. I'm really excited about it.
I like the cut, and I will also say I think the run is kind of getting overlooked, so to speak, because the jump is the jump, and we've kind of attributed that to, lack of a better term, the LeBron shoe. And as Mike has so gracefully pointed out, the Zoom GT cut is the evolutionary form of the Kobe 8. Just the fact that we've got double stack forefront zoom, that intrigues me. So as somebody that runs around a lot like a headless chicken on the court, I think I should at least feel comfortable as I get my 6 points a game with a hopeful war of 1.
There you
Yeah, I'm with you though. Like, I think like I generally get excited about the cut because of the connection to De'Aaron, but like honestly, like all three of these to me would be. I think all three of these are going to be, unless Nike screwed something up and there's some like ankle collar, damaging aspect of it. Generally speaking, it's I'd be happy with any of them, to be honest. Like, let's see if it actually is available or if it's one of those things that they throw onto sneakers and none of us are able to actually get our hands on. So
Nike, help your boys out. We're just trying to review these bad boys. I'm just
No,
gonna say it. Like, yeah, come on. We're just trying to help y'all out. We're trying to see what they're all about.
Get Mike a pair. Get Mike a pair.
Oh no, I'm trying to feed the crew. Let's feed the crew. I'm trying everybody to get something. Let's go.
I appreciate that, Mike, but we know how you get down with the Cosmic Unities. I just want Lightning to strike 4 more times for you.
That would be fantastic. We'll see. We'll see if it strikes once. So.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up. Thanks everybody for rocking with us. Let us know what you think about the GT family of systems, as Nike is calling them. Interestingly enough, these are releasing in China to start, and then they'll be available in the U.S. around the end of the month. But I think equally as important in this episode is that story around the refurbished section at the Nike outlets. You can see that photo on Sneaker History Instagram. But otherwise, you can follow me at Nick Ingval, and guys, let them know how they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at MadWatcher789, and of course on YouTube at Mike Guillory. Rohit, tell them where they can find you, buddy.
I am on Twitter at Roheezy and on Instagram at RohitM13. Thank you guys as always for listening. We can't do this show without you, so
For sure.
you go a long way in making sure our midlife and third life crises aren't as bad as we think they are.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
See you,
See you guys.
everybody.